What is up, down, and sideways, everybody? Welcome back. We are here on League Unlocked going through the free agency madness, shifting our attention to Europe, where you had, again, some rumors that we had talked about coming true. The Fnatic roster was somewhat leaked by eSports Manicos a little bit before free agency finally opened, and it is the case with Broxah heading over to Team Liquid. You have Selfmade from SK Gaming reuniting with his boy Nemesis in the mid lane to make that mid-jungle duo, and that looks like it's going to be the only change that Fnatic will be making ahead of 2020, which means Reckless still going to be with the squad most likely. And I mean, Selfmade, listen, Broxah was pretty much consensus the best, or the second, at worst, third best jungler over the last 2 years in Europe. With Jankos having his incredible 2019, he played second fiddle to him. But you saw the peaks that Broxah could reach, which was the best jungler in the entire group stage for a massive international event in 2018. Can Selfmade reach those ceilings? Well, I mean, that's a lot of work. You'd be hard-pressed to be reaching those highs, but we did see almost 90% of SK Gaming's wins that came in spring and summer. The team made playoffs in spring, which completely destroyed anyone's expectations for that squad. The wins came through Selfmade. It didn't matter what pick he was on, what champion he was doing, and he had some crazy picks. He had this Vi pick, he had an Evelyn pick. Obviously, you know, the Infinity Edge Rek'Sai is what he kind of gets memed about for that game against Splice, but he was still on a subpar mid-tier team. He was looked at as a top 3 jungler, especially in spring. Fell off a little bit in summer, but with that built-in synergy with Nemesis, I think Fnatic can still be right there as that second best team behind G2. Now, Young Buck, we know as he left, he said that there were some issues behind the scenes, some players not willing to kind of fix some of their issues. If that continues here in 2019, with Mithy as a head coach, we know Mithy is not afraid to say anything. He will be the bad guy. He did that on Team Solo Mid. So I think Mithy will not be afraid to call anyone out on their BS and tell them to fix it. And I'm actually excited to see how he will serve as a coach, because we know he is one of the best minds that we've seen in League of Legends. I just hope he surrounds himself with a rock-solid supporting staff that can help him in his debut split as a coach in whatever capacity he brings to the team. So Fnatic looks somewhat similar to 2020, but a couple of other teams made some huge splashes, starting with Origin. We knew all these rumors around different AD carries moving around in Europe, and the one that had upset going to Origin was in the middle of Worlds. We kind of knew that he was visiting with the team and would likely be joining them. Only Alphari and Nukeduck remain from that 2019 roster. They get Upset, who was one of the most sought-after players coming into this offseason, and Xerxes. That's right, he's staying in the LEC. He's not going over to the LPL. He's staying in Europe, and wow, this Origin roster, I mean, they were dropping these signings. Jacob Wolf was saying them all. Upset, Xerxes, staying with Nukeduck, and Alphari, who, even though the team struggled so much in 2019, Alphari was incredible throughout all of the summer split. And then they wrap it up and they say, we're also signing Destiny from the OPL. And that kind of left people with a lot of question marks. This roster looked so insane. And then you bring in somebody from a minor region. But I actually kind of like it, because Destiny has been one of, if not the best supports in the Aussie scene for 3, maybe even 4 years now. And I know, I like to see, I hope we continue to see these star players from these emerging regions get chances on the bigger stage. I think we're going to be seeing more of that in the LCS this offseason. And I think Destiny, with that team around him, listen, you can only do so much as a support, but when you have that relatively stacked roster with you, I think that we're really going to show that he is for real. Obviously, Origin, DEFICIO's been a great scout not even just as a general manager for Origin, but when he was a caster as well. He had a great eye for talent, and I think that Destiny is going to work well on this roster. I think Origin can absolutely vie to be top 3 and maybe even overcome Fnatic, assuming that Nukeduck gets back to his spring form as opposed to what he was in summer, because he's reunited with Upset. Gihoto's there as well as the coach, and I'm very excited for that Origin roster. And that wasn't even the only hype, fully fleshed out roster that we see now for 2020. Rogue, we knew. We saw them in playoffs. We said, man, this young roster has so much talent. All they need to do is upgrade their AD carry, and they're going to be great. Well, that's exactly what they did. Woolite, Hiku, they are out. Hans Sama, who again is a guy who had a very underwhelming, underperforming season in the summer split with Misfits, but I mean, I don't know how you find any rhythm or momentum when that roster was shifting players left, right, and center. I think we're going to see a much more consistent and carry-oriented Hans Sama. This roster, you see there at the bottom, nobody is over the age of 20 except for Vander. Inspired 17, Larson 19, Hans Sama and Finn are both just 20 years old, which is crazy for Hans because he's been around for a few years now. 2017 was his breakout year, and that's already 3 years ago. But I'm very excited for this roster. Absolute playoff caliber team, and maybe even with a higher ceiling. I think them and Origin are absolutely going to be going back and forth for that third best team in Europe. Again, there's no way you don't have G2 as number 1. Don't expect any off-season changes from them. I think Fnatic, even with Selfmade instead of Broxah, are still going to be that number 2 team, but Origin and Rogue absolutely have the potential to finish top 3, and their off-season's done pretty much. I mean, there's still some subs that they'll be figuring out, but the starting 5 are all there already. Super hyped for both of them. A couple other roundup signings or potential signings that are going to happen. We know Excel, they got Young Buck. It sounds like they have their bottom lane with Patrick leaving Origin. He's going over to Excel to play with Norskaren. That's a young up-and-coming bottom lane that I'm pretty excited to see. I'm excited to see the rest of this XL roster because you know Young Buck is going to have a huge hand in signing those players. And for Misfits, they're getting Razork and Denyuk from Giants, Vodafone Giants, which is probably players you don't know. We know that Misfits went all in this year. We're signing all these big free agents. Give us Febivin, give us Gorilla. We're going in. We're going to be that top 3 team. They spent all the money. It didn't work at all. So now, very different approach because they probably need to save some money. They're going to be trying to groom some of that young European talent. I think that's absolutely the right path for them to go. It is full rebuild now for Misfits, and that's just what they have to do after the disaster that was 2019. Fully expect Maxlor to be out of there and Febivin as well. We'll see where they end up signing.